Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Lisa hadn't seen it coming. The day David shouted at her in the middle of their living room, calling her an ungrateful wife and a terrible mother, something inside her broke. The love she had once felt was long gone, replaced by a hollow ache and a desperate need for freedom. But she couldn't just leave. Their two children, Kyle and Emma, needed her. She loved them more than life itself, and she couldn't bear the thought of abandoning them. David's anger grew more vicious by the day. His once charming demeanor warped into something dark and ugly. He knew how to manipulate her to make her feel small and worthless. His words were like venom, sinking deep into her soul. One night, after another one of his tirades, Lisa sat at the kitchen table, trembling and holding back tears. She clutched the phone in her hand, contemplating calling her sister Megan, who had warned her years ago about David's temper. But she couldn't let anyone see how broken she had become. As the days passed, the fights became louder and uglier. David stopped caring whether the kids heard or not. He screamed obscenities, accused her of being useless, lazy, and selfish. Emma would peek out from behind her bedroom door, her tiny face pale with fear, while Kyle tried to distract his little sister with toys and whispered reassurances. Lisa could see it in their eyes. The pain, the confusion, the way they looked at her as if silently begging her to make it stop. One evening, when David stormed out after a particularly brutal argument, Lisa made the decision that changed everything. She would file for divorce. Enough was enough. Her children didn't deserve to grow up in a house filled with hatred and fear. As soon as the papers were served, David's wrath became something more calculated and sinister. He no longer shouted, he strategized. Lisa noticed subtle changes in the way the kids behaved around her. They became distant, almost cold. Kyle refused to let her help with his homework, and Emma wouldn't let her brush her hair anymore. It broke her heart, but she didn't understand why, until one evening when Kyle finally exploded. "You're leaving us because you don't love us anymore," he shouted, eyes brimming with anger and betrayal. "What? Kyle, that's not true. I love you both more than anything," Lisa stammered, reaching out to him, but he jerked away. "Dad said you're running off to be with some other guy. That you never wanted to be our mom," he yelled. His small hands clenched into fists. Lisa froze, her heart racing. How could David tell their children such vile lies? Her hands trembled as she tried to explain, but the damage was already done. The kids didn't want to hear her side. David's poison had taken root, and every word she said seemed to make it worse. The weeks dragged on, and Lisa found herself in a twisted nightmare. The children grew colder and more resentful. Emma wouldn't even let her tuck her in at night, and Kyle barely spoke a word to her. They clung to David every chance they got, practically idolizing him, convinced that their mother was the villain in their lives. The house felt like a stranger's home. Her once happy family now a battlefield where she stood alone. Megan visited one evening, taking one look at Lisa's sunken eyes and tear-stained cheeks before pulling her into a tight hug. "You need to fight back, Lisa," Megan urged. "Don't let him do this to you. You're their mother and they love you. He's manipulating them because he knows it's his best weapon against you." "But how?" Lisa whispered, defeated. "He's turned them against me. They don't even look at me the same way anymore." Megan's expression hardened. "Document everything. Get proof of what he's doing. He's abusing their minds, and that's not just cruel, it's illegal. You have to protect your kids from him, even if they can't see it yet." That night, Lisa lay awake, formulating a plan. If David was using their children to manipulate her, she would expose him for what he truly was. But gathering evidence would take time, and the thought of her children hating her a little more each day crushed her soul. Still, she wouldn't give up. She couldn't. As days turned to weeks, Lisa began keeping a journal, documenting every interaction, every hateful word David planted in the children's minds. She secretly recorded conversations when he thought she wasn't listening, capturing his venomous whispers to the kids about how Lisa was abandoning them for a new man. But it wasn't enough. The kids still looked at her with mistrust and pain. She felt like she was losing them, inch by inch, and it was killing her inside. Then one evening she caught David off guard. She walked into the living room and heard him coaching Kyle on what to say in court, how to describe Lisa as neglectful and uninterested in their lives. Emma sat beside them, nodding solemnly, soaking in every word. Rage boiled in Lisa's chest, but she didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she discreetly placed her phone behind a stack of books on the shelf, recording every word he spewed. Her hands shook as she realized the gravity of what she was capturing. When David finished, Lisa slipped out unnoticed, taking the phone with her. Later, in her bedroom, she played the recording back, her heart pounding as she heard his calculated manipulation unfold. This was it, the proof she needed. Relief washed over her, but it was tainted by heartbreak. Her children were being weaponized against her by the man she once trusted with her life. Now she just had to make sure the truth came out in court, no matter how painful the process might be. The morning of the custody hearing arrived far too quickly, and Lisa's nerves were shot. She glanced at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Dark circles under her eyes, cheeks sunken, lips pale. But she forced herself to take a deep breath and straighten her posture. She couldn't afford to look weak today. Megan arrived to drive her to the courthouse, giving her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "You've got this," she whispered. "You have the proof. Just stick to the plan." Lisa nodded, but doubt still gnawed at her gut. What if the judge didn't believe her? What if David's lies had already poisoned her children beyond repair? When they arrived, David was already there with his lawyer, a sleek, intimidating woman with a cold smile. David looked confident, even smug, his arm draped protectively around Kyle's shoulders. Emma clung to his other side, looking anxious and unsure. The sight made Lisa's heart ache. As Lisa took her seat, her lawyer, Mr. Daniels, leaned over and whispered, "Stay calm. We're going to follow through with our strategy. Just be honest and let the evidence speak for itself." The judge called the hearing to order, and David's lawyer went first. She painted a vivid picture of a neglectful, selfish mother who abandoned her family without a second thought. Lisa sat frozen as David recounted supposed late nights where she never came home, made up stories of her ignoring the kids to chat with men on the phone. It was all lies, but the children sat nodding, their faces cold and detached. Kyle took the stand first. He looked so small and fragile under the harsh lights, but his voice was steady, like he had rehearsed it 1,000 times. "My mom doesn't care about us," he said, glancing back at David for approval. "She's always on her phone, talking to other people. She yells at us a lot and says we're in the way. Sometimes she doesn't even come home at night." Lisa's chest tightened, and she swallowed back a sob. She couldn't lose control, not now. Emma took the stand next, her lower lip trembling. "Mom doesn't love us anymore. She doesn't tuck me in like she used to. And she never wants to spend time with us." Lisa bit her lip to keep from crying. She wanted to rush over, pull Emma into her arms, and tell her how wrong she was. But she remained silent, fighting to keep herself composed. When it was finally her turn to speak, Lisa stood up, feeling every muscle in her body tense. She met the judge's gaze with as much steadiness as she could muster. "Your Honor," she began, voice wavering but determined, "what you just heard. It's not the truth. My husband has been manipulating my children, feeding them lies to make them hate me. I know how it sounds, but I have proof." David's confident smirk faltered slightly as Lisa glanced at Mr. Daniels, who gave her a small nod. Lisa pulled out her phone, the one where she had saved the secret recording, and handed it to the bailiff to play through the court's audio system. The room fell silent as David's voice filled the space. Cold, calculating, almost hypnotic. "You have to tell the judge that Mommy doesn't care about you." His voice hissed on the recording. "Say that she's never around, that she's always on the phone. Remember what we practiced, Kyle. You need to say it just like that." Lisa didn't dare look at her children. She was too afraid to see the shock and betrayal on their faces. The judge leaned forward, his expression turning dark. David's lawyer looked panicked, whispering frantically in his ear, but David just sat there, his face drained of color. As the recording continued, Emma's soft voice came through. "But Daddy, I don't want to lie about Mommy. I miss her." David's tone grew harsh. "You do what I tell you, Emma. If you don't say it, I'll never let you see Mommy again. Got it?" When the recording ended, the courtroom remained deathly silent. Lisa risked a glance at her children. Kyle was staring down at his shoes, his face red and wet with silent tears. Emma looked completely shattered, clutching her stuffed bunny to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. David stammered, trying to save face. "That recording, it's out of context. She probably spliced it together to frame me." The judge raised a hand to silence him, his face like granite. "That's enough, Mr. Garrett. I've heard more than enough." Lisa's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, given the evidence presented, we are requesting full custody for my client, with supervised visitation for Mr. Garrett. The emotional manipulation inflicted on these children is clear and severe." David's lawyer was already packing up her papers, realizing the case was beyond saving. David glared at Lisa, hatred burning in his eyes, but she didn't flinch. She'd come too far to break now. The judge glanced down at his notes, his voice firm and unyielding. "Based on the evidence, I am granting sole custody to Ms. Garrett, with supervised visitation for Mr. Garrett. Furthermore, I am ordering mandatory counseling for both the children and Mr. Garrett to address the psychological damage caused." Lisa couldn't hold back her tears any longer, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were of relief. Finally, the nightmare was over. David's control was shattered, his lies exposed for the whole world to see. After the verdict was delivered, Kyle and Emma hesitated near the bench, unsure of what to do. Megan approached cautiously, offering a warm, gentle smile. Lisa knelt down to their eye level, her heart aching at how small and vulnerable they seemed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I love you both so much. I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted you to feel like I didn't care." Kyle wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, looking ashamed. "Mom, sorry, I didn't know," Dad said. "He said you left because you didn't want us anymore." Emma buried her face in Lisa's shoulder, sobbing. "I missed you, Mommy." Lisa hugged them tightly, trying to hold back the surge of emotions overwhelming her. "I'll never leave you," she promised. "No matter what anyone says. You'll always be my babies." David stormed out of the courtroom, defeated and humiliated, while Lisa remained with her children in her arms. She knew there would be a long road ahead. Healing wouldn't happen overnight. But now the truth was out, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope. The days following the court hearing were filled with cautious optimism. Lisa knew that simply winning custody wasn't enough. Her children had been through so much trauma and manipulation. Healing would take time, patience, and unconditional love. Kyle and Emma barely spoke the first few days back home. They were quiet, unsure how to act around her, like they were afraid of saying the wrong thing. Lisa gave them space, gently encouraging them to do familiar things they used to love, like baking cookies or watching movies together. At first, they hesitated, but little by little, they began to open up. One evening, as Lisa pulled a tray of warm chocolate chip cookies from the oven, she felt a small hand tug at her shirt. It was Emma, her eyes wide and uncertain. "Mommy, can you braid my hair like you used to?" she asked, her voice tiny. Lisa's heart swelled, and she had to blink back tears. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's go get your brush." As they sat together on the living room rug, Emma chatted softly about school, her favorite show, and her new drawing. Kyle hovered near the doorway, pretending not to watch, but Lisa could feel his curiosity. "Kyle," she called softly, "do you want to help me with the next batch of cookies?" He hesitated, kicking at the floor, but eventually wandered over, picking up a spoon to stir the batter. They worked in comfortable silence, and Lisa could feel the tension easing little by little. Later that night, as Lisa tucked Emma into bed, she whispered, "I'm sorry I believed Daddy. I thought you didn't love us anymore." Lisa stroked her daughter's hair gently, her heart aching. "I never stopped loving you. I'm so sorry you ever thought that. You are my world, Emma. You and Kyle both." Emma snuggled deeper into her blanket, looking pensive. "Daddy said you wanted a new family. That you didn't want us." Lisa clenched her jaw, fighting the surge of anger. "Your daddy was wrong. I would never ever leave you for anyone else. You'll always be my number one." Satisfied for now, Emma finally drifted to sleep, a faint smile on her lips. To fulfill the court's requirements, Lisa set up counseling sessions for both children. The therapist, Dr. Mallory, was gentle and kind, allowing the kids to express their feelings without fear of judgment. At first, they were hesitant, clinging to old beliefs instilled by their father. But gradually, through careful conversations, they began to voice their confusion and pain. One session was particularly heartbreaking. Kyle admitted that he didn't know what to believe anymore. "Dad always said Mom didn't love us. That she wanted to leave because we weren't good enough." Dr. Mallory looked at Lisa encouragingly, prompting her to respond. Lisa knelt in front of Kyle, looking him straight in the eyes. "Kyle," she said softly, "there was never a single day that I didn't love you. Your dad was angry at me, and sometimes when people are angry they say things that aren't true. I'm so sorry he made you feel that way." Kyle's chin quivered. "You didn't want another family?" "No," Lisa whispered, cupping his cheek. "Never. You and Emma are my only family. Nothing could change that." Tears spilled down his cheeks as he finally allowed her to hug him, his small arms wrapping around her shoulders like he was afraid to let go. After that breakthrough, things started to change. Emma grew more cheerful, her playful spirit returning. Kyle was slower to open up, but his barriers gradually lowered as Lisa proved, time and again, that she was there to stay. One evening, Megan came over with takeout, sharing updates about David's mandatory counseling. "He's still denying everything," she sighed. "Claims the recording was edited. But the court isn't buying it. They're keeping visitations supervised for now." Lisa felt a mix of relief and sadness. As much as she despised what David had done, part of her mourned the man he used to be, the man she fell in love with. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who thrived on control and manipulation. Just then the doorbell rang. Lisa glanced through the window and froze. It was David. A tall, burly man in a uniform stood beside him, his court-appointed supervisor. Lisa hesitated before opening the door. "David," she said, keeping her voice calm, "what are you doing here?" His face was a mix of regret and bitterness. "The court allowed me a supervised visit," he said stiffly. "I wanted to see the kids." Lisa nodded, stepping aside to let them in. Kyle and Emma peeked cautiously around the corner, unsure of what to expect. David knelt down, trying to put on his most sincere smile. "Hey, champ. Princess," he greeted awkwardly. Kyle barely moved, while Emma glanced nervously at Lisa. David's smile faltered, but he pressed on, talking about how much he missed them and how he was working on being a better dad. But Kyle finally spoke, his voice small but firm. "Why did you lie about Mom?" The question seemed to hit David like a punch. He opened his mouth to deny it, but the supervisor cleared his throat, giving him a stern look. David's shoulders sagged. I thought I was doing what was best. I was hurt and angry, and I wanted you to stay with me. I didn't want to lose you." Kyle crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. "You lied about her. You made us hate Mom for no reason." David looked utterly defeated. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, but the words felt hollow. Lisa put a hand on Kyle's shoulder. "It's okay to feel confused," she whispered. "You don't have to decide how you feel right now." The visit was brief and awkward, but as David left, he glanced back at Lisa. "I really am sorry," he said, and for the first time in a long while, there was a hint of genuine remorse in his eyes. Life slowly returned to a sense of normalcy. Lisa took up new hobbies with the kids, gardening with Emma and building model cars with Kyle. Little by little, they found laughter again, rebuilding their family from the ground up. Kyle was still cautious around his father during supervised visits, while Emma remained hesitant. But Lisa made sure they knew it was okay to feel conflicted, that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting the hurt. One night, as they sat around a fire pit making esmores, Kyle asked, "Mom, are we ever gonna be okay again?" Lisa smiled gently, brushing marshmallow from his cheek. "Yes, baby. We're gonna be okay. We just have to keep trying, keep loving each other. We're stronger than what happened to us." Emma snuggled into Lisa's lap, her face peaceful and content. Kyle finally allowed himself to smile, the genuine kind that lit up his whole face. For the first time in months, Lisa felt hope blooming in her heart. Hope that, despite everything, they would come out of this stronger, braver, and more bonded than ever before. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.